after 6 o'clock. My name is Corey Box, and I will be presiding over tonight's discussion. And if we could get underway with a roll call, it'd be much appreciated.
Brown.
Here.
Short.
Here.
Emmons. OJ.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Murray.
Here.
Mayor Box.
Here. And tonight, for our invocation, we welcome from First Baptist Jenks, Pastor Christian Moore. Mr. Moore, go ahead and tell us about your church and ministry, what's going on in the community, and make an invitation if you like.
All right. My name is Christian Moore. I'm the student pastor at First Baptist Jenks. And our church has been a part of Jenks for 110 years this year. And so First Baptist Jenks has had a long legacy and history with Jenks. Man, we just love to love our neighbors and love our community as best as we can and be there for Jenks in the way that Christ has called us to be. Specifically in the student ministry, we have students from 7th grade to 12th grade that are in my ministry and love and enjoy doing that and helping out in the high school, having some chances to be the representative for Fellowship of Christian Athlete with the football team and some different things like that. And so just a great place to be and to plug in and be a part of if you are looking for a church home or church community for you or your kids. We'd love to have you. So,
Mr. Moore, thank you. Lead us to the Lord in prayer, brother.
Absolutely. Lord, we come to you right now. God, I thank you for today and for this opportunity that you give us to gather and to have these discussions for the city of Jenks, God. Lord, I pray today for everyone in this meeting, God, that as they have discussions and make decisions, Lord, that you would guide them with your wisdom, God, with your heart, with the way that you would want Jenks to go, God, that you would help us to remain calm, to honor you with our words, God, and to look for ways that we can make you more known in our city. So in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Christian. You'll remain standing if you can for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, it says on our agenda we have an animal welfare spotlight. Do we have an animal? Do we have a spotlight? We have no animal, no spotlight. Very well. Citizens' comments. This is the time in our meeting where if you are here as a member of the public and you like to address the council as a whole, anything that's on your mind, as long as it's not being discussed on tonight's agenda, we welcome you to do so. And if you are, if you could keep it about 2 minutes, we'd greatly appreciate it. Open the floor for citizens or public comments. Yes, ma'am, you may. If we could just have your name and address for the record, and just so you know, legally, this is not a two-way discussion, so just tell us what's on your mind, and
Sure.
If we need to follow up with a business card, a phone number, email address, we'll do so. Sound fair?
All right.
Happy New Year.
Okay, Happy New Year. My name is Jane Aston. I'm a resident of Jenks and have lived here for several years. The reason I am here tonight is the power in Jenks going off and going off and going off. We have lost power in our area. I'm a resident of Melody Lane 4. We have probably lost power more in the past 3 months than we have in 10 years. And I've called PSO, neighbors surrounding me have called PSO. The excuse is squirrels. Well, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. And so by talking to neighbors, I have learned, and I didn't know this, that Jenks has a word and has some say on PSO or something. I don't know. I haven't researched it, but that's why I'm here, just to present it, just to let you know that I do speak on my behalf, but neighbors as well.
Very well. Before you go, can we have your address for the record?
Yes, it's 815 North Holly Street.
Do you want me to, I represent your ward, do you want me to follow up with you, get you some
That would be great.
Okay, can I get
Yes, I
a,
would
before
like
you
to
go,
know.
can you just leave an email address or a phone number
Sure.
if you don't mind? Yeah, that'd be great. Matter of fact.
Okay.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Let's just knock that out. And if you, before you leave, if Mr. Parsons, do you have any insight you could share with her? Not now, but, yeah, okay. Now wouldn't be the time, but if you'd like, that gentleman right there is our Public Works Director. And most of the time when the power goes out, it's because he left his finger on the switch for too long.
Yeah, I don't believe
Yeah, he short-circuited it. Yeah, he dragged his feet. He wasn't grounded. Yeah, probably. No, his cell phone's good. We'll get in touch via text. We can continue this discussion, just not tonight, if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you.
Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Anyone else? Public comments? All right, very well. Seeing none, we'll close the floor, and we'll get back into our tonight's general agenda. General business, item number 1 is the appropriate consideration, appropriate action relating to our consent agenda. The council may pull an item from this agenda for further discussion, or you can enact it all with one approval with a motion to approve. So we'll leave it to you guys.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a proper motion and a second to approve item 1. Let's vote, please.
Brown,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Abel,
Yes.
Murray. Yes. Mayor Box.
Yes, thank you. Item 2 will be pulled. Moving on to item 3. Item 3 is ordinance number 1657. It's related to JZ or Jenks zoning 24 PUD, which if you're new here is planned unit development. 151, rezoning a piece of property to RS2, which is residential single family, and establishing the planned unit development 151 overlay district or PUD 151. Repealing all ordinances and parts thereof in conflict, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The general location we're talking about tonight is 131st and Kimberly Clark Place. If you have an agenda with you tonight and you'd like to follow along, if you can't see the monitors from where you're sitting, we are on page 73, and I believe we're getting started with Mrs. Hilton. Good evening, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor Box, council, and staff. This item is JZ 24 PUD 151. Currently, the property is zoned ag, and it's about 73 acres plus or minus, and it's generally located around 131st and Harvard. So we had a planning commission hearing on this, and it was approved 7-0. So we had all the planning commissioners present, which hasn't happened in a little bit due to many circumstances. And there was about, 7 people who spoke, and they were a mix of questions, comments, pro and con for the project. The project was then addressed by the applicant and the engineer of record. So this is a piece of land that you have seen on a couple of occasions. I have seen over probably the last 5 years that I've been here, almost 5, can you believe that? The project has had multiple people take a stab at it, try to make it work, try to make the numbers pencil, as they say. And I think the one before you this evening is probably the best one that I have seen. So they have about 73 acres, and of that 73 acres, they're allowed a certain amount of density. So our comprehensive land use plan dictates the density for a parcel. So this one is, let's look over here, medium intensity single family. And the way that it is put together, they would have a maximum of, I should have just gone in order, but I skipped around, 260 units per this PUD. So if you're looking at page 74, I will go on in order now. This would require plat in the future, and we call those technical documents. We have a list that is state statute. It requires council to accept any public infrastructure, and it comes to you all for that purpose. I go through a checklist, engineering goes through a checklist, and We put them on consent like we did this evening, and they are filed by the applicant. And, but you would see it again, the project that is. We have received a couple of calls from the neighborhoods surrounding this. They generally wanted to know what was being done, and that was the gist of it. The school district is Bixby Public Schools. This is not Jenks Public Schools. The reserve areas, so I mentioned earlier about 17% or 20%, approximately 17 acres would be reserved or be dedicated for reserve areas and open space for the entire community, which is, in the grand scheme of things, a lot of open space. We have many communities that have a little postage size park that is the public amenity, and in this case, they have 20% of their total land area, which I think is very significant and should not be overlooked. The other details, there will be perimeter fencing. That's very common in our subdivisions. We have landscaped entries, that's expected, and they do ask for an exception later for a larger sign. You all have granted that every occasion that has been requested. We probably need to go in at some point and look at the code and see what is a more reasonable size, since it appears that our requirement is very small and everybody asks for larger ones. So we'll look at that at some point. One thing that's different than any of the projects that I saw in the past, this one does include a splash pad, and one of the things that we talked about internally and at the Planning Commission and even at City Council previously regarding this parcel is, what are the amenities? Do they match what other neighborhoods in Jenks have? And are they enough for a neighborhood? The city of Jenks doesn't have a lot of public parks, and the tradition long before I got here was that each subdivision created their own parkland and maintained it themselves. So as I said, the number of proposed lots are 260 and less, so that would be the maximum. They always provide a site plan, or generally speaking, and they get us close to the idea of what they think they can build, but sometimes there's a hiccup, and maybe they'll lose 2 or 3 lots here on this street or that street. So, but the maximum in this PUD is 260 lots. If you look on page 75, I have in blue the residential bulk and dimensional standards. This comes straight out of our zoning code, or we refer to it as the Unified Development Ordinance. In 2022, we adopted the UDO, and it combined our subdivision regulations with our zoning code. So what we look at is the lot area, the lot area per dwelling unit, what is the zoning, what is the lot width allowed, what are the setbacks. So how far does your structure have to be from the front yard, from the side yard? If your side yard is adjacent to a street, that's an exterior side yard, how far is that setback allowed to be? And then the rear yard. And then we also have impervious surface coverage. At the City of Jenks, we did not always have that. This is a little bit different. And they've asked for an exception for that. One of the reasons we talk about, actually, it may not have an exception, but I'll talk about impervious surface coverage. One of the reasons that we do that is so that someone can't come in and pave their entire front yard and then fill up the entire backyard with structures and paving. And you would be surprised it happens. So this kind of helps prevent that. But also it allows the engineer of record to think through how much impervious surface do we expect? Because I think many times in the past, maybe subdivisions were designed by a standard that wasn't really representative of what was actually being built by the home purchasers. So people nowadays often want a pool, or they want a large shop in the back, and we allow accessory dwelling units. So this kind of helps everybody think through what the end project or the end lot uses might be. If you keep looking, I'll just go to the next page. It shows the zoning map. As you can see, it's all green right now, and it's not that entire parcel that you would see on page 76. It's a portion of that parcel. If you look on page 77, they gave some of their amendments since Planning Commission. One of the things Planning Commission asked them to include in their PUD that all the structures be 100% masonry. So every home would be required to be 100% masonry, and they agreed to that. And then they gave the definition of masonry, and that is for the first floor. And let's see, we'll keep going. I highlighted it again on page 79. That's generally the extent of it. If you look on page 82, it's staff comments. And I just want to remind the Planning Commission and the public who may not be familiar with our code. When we did update the Unified Development Ordinance in 2022, we also included in that document anti-monotony standards so that your neighbor can't have the same house as you, so that it looks and feels more, I would just say not so cookie cutter, so that it doesn't look like I had one great idea and I sold that great idea to everybody, and now am I the third house or the 10th house, and nobody knows because they all look the same. So hopefully that'll help with that. There are also street design standards, parkland provisions, irrigation requirements. All of these are new standards since 2022, and it has had a considerable impact, not only in residential development, but also in our commercial developments. I'm hearing from a lot of developers and builders who are not familiar with our code, but learning to be. So on page 84, starts the actual PUD document. And we'll just skip through to page 89. Thank you, Brandon. This shows the conceptual site plan. Another thing that Planning Commission asked them, there was an east-west street that was pretty long, and they asked them to come in and adjust that. That required the code to have an adjustment, so they couldn't meet the code. And when I'm saying in this particular instance, it's called links and nodes. A link would be a street and a node would be an intersection. So you have to have a certain percentage per the code, and they couldn't quite get there. But I do think this is a better street alignment. If you look on page 90, it's kind of a zoomed in, so to speak, conceptual layout of their parkland. And you can see that they've added a sports court where you can play multiple different types of sports in a splash pad, and they gave samples or illustrations what that might look like. Then if you look on page 91, these are the development standards per their PUD. And I think another thing that's been kind of different, normally a developer is only required to put sidewalks within their subdivision. Harvard Oaks came in and the city required them to add a sidewalk along Kimberly-Clark Place. So between their property line, there's a huge easement. It's a PSO easement. And Harvard Oaks had to coordinate with PSO for an access easement across that PSO land over to Kimberly-Clark Place, and had to put a sidewalk in. And that this development has the same requirement, and they have agreed that they will work with PSO to move forward on those two items. So it is extraordinary that we ask that of them, but that was part of the requirement by the city, is to get a sidewalk along Kimberly-Clark Place. And I believe that is it.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Hilton. Before you depart, any questions from council for Marcia on my right before we introduce Tanner? Okay.
I'll just throw a couple of quick comments here. Number one, great job with the planning on this, the changes that were proposed. Planning Commission did a great job on this as well. They really dissected this, so this is a lot different than anything that we've looked at before. Just a couple of little odd things that stood out to me. I know that some of the residual concerns that were raised during the Planning Commission meeting were the amenities. The amenities that we're seeing here are much better than anything we've seen before. And actually, when I look at the exceptions or things that stand out as a PUD, it doesn't look like there's many concessions that are non-conforming issues. So I don't really see that as a major issue. But there were some questions about whether or not the dispersion of the amenities was balanced throughout the planned unit development. So there's just a question about how they're going to balance that out. I think the concern was to the southwest corner of the area. This is going to sound like a crazy question too, but as I was reading through, knowing that the big stuff was covered, you look at a little bit more detail. And something that just kind of caught my attention as I was reading through, I hadn't seen a developer propose the 1 tree per lot before, which I really like that. But just to kind
Can
of
you say that
recommend-
again? The one what?
There, 1 tree per lot.
Okay.
So on page 3 on the landscape. And just a reminder to the developers to follow the UDO on the types of trees that we put in. But I noticed that there was no reference to the size of the tree, and I don't think we really addressed that in the UDO.
We do.
It is
2
the
inch.
5 foot, I think, is that,
It has a caliper.
okay, the caliper,
I don't
okay.
remember what it is, but there's a caliper. I think it's a 2-inch caliper. but I'm
Okay,
not positive.
okay, yeah, good, just a
And you
question.
have to measure so far up from the base of the tree, and,
Not a bunch of little Charlie Brown Christmas trees, I'm just kidding.
I mean, they may look like it by a mature tree,
That's true,
but-
that's true. Let's see, the other thing, just a clarification, you've already said it, but when I listened to the minutes or the video, the motion on the 100% masonry didn't really clarify the first floor. I just want to make sure that, yes, 100% is just first floor. We're not requiring that for the second
Yes, sir.
floors.
That is
Okay,
how it's
yeah,
written in
yeah.
the PUD.
Do you believe that was the intent of the planning commission's?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
do?
I do too,
Okay.
just as clarification. So really, the only real question is, again, the dispersion of the amenities, if we've
Okay.
addressed that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mayor? No? Gentlemen? All right, very well. Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. You may have a seat, and we'll bring forth Tanner. And then after that, we'll open up to the floor to the members of the public. Good evening.
Good evening, Megan Pasco with Tanner Consulting, 5323 South Lewis Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, who is Piper Management LLC, and I have Levi Green with me here today as well, representing who is the applicant. This is a different developer than you have seen, than I have been here before with.
Thank you.
Marseille did a great job going over everything. Makes my job easier. I just want to point out again the differences, like Marseille talked about. Splash pad, added sports court. We also did add fountains or guaranteed fountains in any of the wet detention ponds. So if there's static water in those ponds at all times, they'll have fountains. That was a concern of some of the neighbors and maybe of this group as well. 100% masonry. I'd like to talk about the dispersion of amenities that Councilor Brown brought up. Brandon, can we look at the site plan, please? So right now, we are planning on both the sports court and the splash pad being in one location. We've found that when families have children of multiple ages, it's better to have these amenities in one location. So if mom's there or dad's there by themselves and they have a kid playing in the splash pad and a kid playing at the sports court, they can watch both at the same time. In general, like Marseille pointed out, this project has a lot of open space. I would not say the locations of these amenities are final. Once we get through the design and go through all the engineering process, they may get relocated to a better place within the neighborhood. On the south side, some amenities that are there, that will be there, some walking trails around the detention ponds. And those detention ponds have to be there. So I think there will be an adequate dispersion of amenities, but we will keep that in mind as we're going forward. But kind of the safety of the kids is why we typically lay it out that way. I'm going to turn it over to Levi Green to address you guys, and then I'll be here to answer any questions that the public or you guys may have later on.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, sir.
Evening. Thank you, Mayor, Councilman, staff. My name is Levi Green. I am the owner of Piper Management. It's an arm of our development company, GC Enterprises. I'm fortunate to be a third-generation developer, working with my father since I was in diapers, and I learned the trade from a very young age, and I enjoy what we get to do today. When we saw this project a few months ago come before you guys in the form that it was, we agree of the denial that you guys had put forth. We looked at this project and decided that we would take a run at it and build something that the city of Jenks conforms to and the surrounding neighborhoods and residents would align with. We listened to all the concerns, and we think the PUD we have before you today addresses a lot of those. One of the big things on the previous PUD that came before you was the density of the 335 lots, which we have reduced that by 65 homes. We also increased the lot width from 40s to 55s, meeting the RS2 zoning, which meets or exceeds some of the other developments neighboring this property. The amenity package that came prior was lack thereof, and we decided that we wanted to put something out there that we could be proud of, something that we would want to raise our families in. And with that, we added a splash pad, pickleball court, basketball court, some that we've done in previous developments, as you can see here photographed, that the neighborhoods enjoy, low maintenance, but a lot of benefits. The masonry requirements was one of the things that we also wanted to put in this PUD to show the type of product, as we are developers, not builders. So where I do not have a home to show you what we're going to put there, I wanted to give you standards of kind of what it would look like. So putting that in there, I think, was a pivotal and important to kind of show you guys what we have put in plan to put out in the market. The fountains was also a big issue in the previous meetings, that concerns of stagnant ponds, wildlife, mosquitoes, and that's one thing that we address as well. Marseille, Tanner Consulting, staff has done a great job with this PUD, explaining it and laying things out. So not go too much more in detail of what they've already said. I'm here to answer your questions and address those accordingly. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Green. I'll head back this way. Any questions from you gentlemen?
I just have a quick one.
Mr.
The
Abel.
ponds on the south side, they have the fountains illustrated there, but there's the existing pond by the basketball court and the pickleball that doesn't specify if it'll have a fountain or not. I guess my question is why or why not?
The ones that are now on the PUD are ones that will be developed. The one to the northeast is something that we could look at adding that. I think the size is a difference. That's definitely something we can look into as well. I'm not saying that we won't.
That's an existing pond, right? Okay. Is it traditional? Is that standard, that existing pond versus one that you're going to dig out would be?
Sure.
Yeah. You guys, do they put fountains in existing ones?
Yes,
There's-
absolutely.
Okay, even the ones that big?
This is more of an illustration.
Yeah.
And due to change. but-
Okay.
So it not being on there is because it was on an existing pond.
Understood. Okay.
I would-
Anything else, Mr. Abel?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I would encourage any standing water, like ponds like this, have some sort of aeration, whether it is a fountain or something else, because I know we will be dealing with this in the future if there is an aeration or a fountain. So
Sure.
that would be my recommendation to council, is require any of the ponds to have aeration or a fountain.
Yeah, we'll become fast friends of the HOA president
Sure, absolutely.
when they tell us about the mosquitoes this big carrying away their kids.
Sure.
Mr. Murray?
A couple of different things. One, and you kind of alluded to it, but it comments in affordability that Kimberly Estates will provide a wide range of housing options. Just any idea of a ballpark of what kind of price range you're looking at or a builder's going to put in here?
So we develop for all types of home builders, large and small. I think the market will tell us at the time of development what is the desire. Now, if I were to give you a number, I would say I would give it off of square foot, which would be that 200 square foot range for the home. So the end product, I can't tell you the price or what it will be 2 years from now, once this development is complete.
I know that that was a concern previously of the builder that was going to build, that the price range, a lot of residents were a little bothered by it because of devaluing their homes. And
Sure.
so I'm just trying to head that off a little bit. I know you can't put a ballpark on it, but in approving something, at least kind of like to know what we're looking at so that the residents around there have an idea that, okay, we're not just going to be putting in something that's just going to be something. So, I mean, that's why I'm asking. Other thing is, it talks a little bit about the site is moderately sloped and primarily drains to the east, southeast, south, and southwest. And I know that Councilor Abel talked about the pond, and you're showing 3 ponds there. And I appreciate you putting in aeration stuff, because that was a concern from a previous discussion. But, you know, to the south of you is Gray Oaks and then Dutchess Crossing. Dutchess Crossing had a lot of problems with Gray Oaks water, sludge, junk coming into their ponds. I know that the city did what they could, but the Housing Homeowner Association had to put up a lot of money to clean that stuff. I don't know if Gray Oaks had the same problems per se of their own, but you're lining up 3 ponds right above Dutch or Southern Oak, Gray Oaks rather, into Dutchess Crossing. I know it says it'll go into the creek, but the creek's quite a ways away. I guess I would just like to make sure, and that's something that our engineers would obviously have to question and look at, is it going to cause a problem that already exists in these other homes?
Sure. So Marce had talked about the amount of acres that this project has, and it supersedes what is required. And for that is the reason is these 3 ponds, to make sure that there is sufficient drainage for the development that is held and retained, so it doesn't have that effect.
And Levi, could I jump in too? The issue that we had, because I'm familiar with the Dutchess Crossing, and I think one of the main reasons that we had that issue where Gray Oaks is developed and we have silt accumulation in the Dutchess Pond is because all that water coming from Gray Oaks was just through creeks. There was no pond to let the water and the silt settle. And so, you know, when you see these 3 ponds, I think that our staff is confident that with the water flowing south and going into these ponds, once that water reaches a level and is then going south into Harvard Oaks, Dutchess Crossing, that silt will be in these 3 ponds and not going down, running into the Dutchess Pond.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Shaw. I just want to head it off that
Yeah,
there have been
I agree,
issues.
sure.
I just wanted to make it known that, you know, I just want to at least say, okay, as long as you're aware of it, you weren't here when those were built, maybe, or maybe you were. And so I just kind of making sure of those things. Other than a cost, why no pool?
The cost of the pools on other developments that we've seen, HOAs, there's pros and cons. The cost to maintain them, the HOA dues, some people, you'll be surprised, will complain about the HOA dues, but the amenities they get to have. The cost, the liability issues, we've kind of strayed away from pools in the past 2 or 3 years, and we've seen that splash pads, pickleball courts is now one of the larger amenities required. We feel like this is a more fitting for the current need for amenity packages.
Well, again, thank you. And I know that, again, from previous conversations over developments, other developments in the area that have pools are concerned that residents who don't have pools in their homeowners area are going to indulge themselves. And I'm just pulling that out to
I
make
think
sure.
we'll be concerned about them wanting to play pickleball on our courts. So
Unless you gate it.
maybe it's a
yeah.
trade-off. They can swim, we can play.
Sure, sure.
Your residents are going to work up a sweat playing pickleball
Sure.
and go dive into the Providence Hills
Sure.
pool, which if you haven't seen it is remarkably nice pool for. Yeah, it's a beautiful pool and they have a beautiful pond and.
Sure.
I don't know if you were here a few months ago, but that was some of the concerns from the
Sure.
nearby neighborhood is when their amenities are nice and there's no gate. Yeah, and I've been out there a few times too, and I've seen people drive in from other, I know who
Sure.
they are, like, you don't even live here.
Sure,
You're
sure.
here to get the ice cream truck.
Absolutely.
But anyway, we appreciate you. Anything else you need to share with us?
Not at
Last
this
call,
time.
questions?
Real quick.
Yeah, Mr. Short.
So I think you alluded to it, but timeline for this, the completion of this development, you said 2 years?
I would say in the next 2 years is when you'll see the first doorbell ring toilet flush.
Okay. And then price per lot, roughly?
Undecided at this
Okay.
time.
Local builders,
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
established local builders?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, we know where you live. Any other questions for Mr. Green? All right, thank you, sir, appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the floor to the applicant for a moment. We'll go ahead and open the floor for public comment. If you gave a public comment at the planning commission meeting, let's just try to keep it around 3 to 4 minutes. We'll have some liberty and grace. This is just the zoning. This will be coming back for a plat, but 3 to 4 minutes if you could, try to be succinct. I think most of the council members had an opportunity to go back and review that planning commission meeting online. So, but with that, if you're itching to talk to us, the floor is yours. Good evening, sir. Happy New Year to you.
My name's Charles Hogue. I'm with the Providence Hills Board. You knew we were coming up here.
How you doing?
Good. Address is 2014 East 133rd Street South. We do still have some concerns. One's pricing of the house. It's not outlined. We want to make sure it's not going to affect our overall house pricing within our deal and lower our overall values of our house. A lot of us have moved here in the last couple of years, and we're seeing a lot of people leave due to things coming in, and it's really concerning. Two, we've seen an uptick in people vandalizing our pool, trespassing and all that. I would really like the city council to think about that. We're using too much of Jenks police time and stuff to run off people for trespassing that we shouldn't be having to deal with. That's taking our personal time and all that, because there's not enough amenities around to support the kids and growing up and all that. That's all I have to say. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? We have a strict cell phone use policy, Ms. Montgomery.
Charlotte Montgomery, 10612 South Fir Avenue. I have a question to clarify what you will be approving for lot width. On page 75, the staff report on the standards shows 60 foot, but when you go to the developer's standards on, I think it's 91, it shows 55 feet. So what are you approving tonight, 60 foot or 55?
55.
Okay.
There's an agenda item for later
Yeah, I know.
tonight, yeah. I
So
think, I'm
it's
guessing
just
Ms.
unclear.
Hilton put that there to kind of, as a clue as to the future. So the timing is a little bit interesting here, but
So it will be 55 foot.
Sammy Hagar, yep.
Okay.
55. That's it? Charlotte? Happy New Year. Good evening.
Happy New Year.
Mhm.
Catherine Lenhart, 777 West 106th Street South. Okay, I have a quick question about pickleball as the amenity. Pickleball actually has high insurance as well due to liability from coaching, just play. So I'd like to hear the response as far as swimming pool versus pickleball. And I'm sure the respondent can answer that question. And then secondly, there's been some articles in the Wall Street Journal and everything about pickleball and the complaints from neighbors. So I'd like to know which sound ordinance would be directed at this. And then in addition, I've heard from several homeowners associations that sometimes code enforcement could be stronger. And, due to whatever's going on with the police, that support isn't always offered at a timely, like at the time of an instance. So that's no disrespect to the police. So I'm trying to understand is, what is that relationship between homeowner governance and the police? So it's kind of three things.
So the
Insurance.
first one was is
Insurance
pickleball less
as an
expensive
amenity.
than
Yep,
a pool?
because that's something to consider. So if that's
Okay.
an objection to a swimming pool, what's that analysis for pickleball? Second was the sound ordinance, and then third is just code enforcement as a relationship between homeowner association and just, not, I guess.
Sure. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to, which one of those do you want to address?
Oh, I was just going to say, if it's a HOA-owned amenity, I would think they would be responsible for enforcing whatever time that the pickleball court is open or closed. So if sound is an issue, I would think the HOA would have the pickleball court shut down at something like 9 PM, but, I mean, that would really be up to the HOA.
And not to sound like I'm joking, but there is word in the pickleball community that, aren't they trying to replace the ball with something quieter? This is a thing, I saw it on Newsbreak.
And they're making paddles now that are quieter, but.
Yeah. As far as the relationship between a pool and a pickleball court, there's no expertise up here, so we won't address that. We'll let somebody else do that. And as far as the sound ordinance we can let somebody else on staff talk about that. But my suspicion is he's right. This is this is freedom for the HOA to control this and tell the residents that they maybe can't play after 9 or
That's
8,
really
whatever the case may
actually,
be.
I'm talking about if kids are just hanging out on the pickleball court, or it's being used for something other than pickleball, or, they're climbing the fence. So, where does that fall? Not just the pickleball hours and that. It's what about if it's misused? And I'm sure that's true of a swimming pool, that we've heard about the golf carts and stuff like that. And really, that's really the issue, is the golf carts a lot of times. But, if you're putting the onus on the homeowners association for golf carts, what about kids who are climbing the fence and safety like that? So that's what I'm curious about.
And I appreciate the issues that you bring up, and I could be corrected by the planning director, but I don't know that those specific items are what we're talking about right now, but I'd be more than happy to talk about those, set up a meeting and talk about the noise ordinance, what amenities that the council is requiring with PUDs, whether it's pools or splash pads or, the issue with pickleball courts. But I don't know that anyone's going to have specific responses to those questions tonight.
Well, it's probably just good food for thought for a basis for amenities, and especially if we're trying to keep in line with trends, and maybe we need to update in certain areas. So,
I
sounds
agree.
great.
Yeah, yep.
Sounds fine. Thanks.
All right, anyone else? Last call. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the floor to public comment. We'll give an opportunity for for Megan or Levi, if you want to address any of the concerns that have been brought forth from the public, you may. If not, give you the opportunity to do that.
Just a few quick ones here. Kind of go backwards. In regards to the amenities, if you look at the price for amenities, a pickleball court is $50,000 to $60,000 to produce, and a pool with bathrooms and facilities is around $350,000. So the price there is a big chunk, as well as the upkeep on that. A pickleball court is concrete with a net and a lock, where a pool is chemicals and time and so on. The pool is something you use 6 to 8 months a year, and the pickleball court is something you could use year-round. In the PUD, the pickleball court that we had built at one of our other developments, in the bottom right corner, there's a little sign that, just to your point, about the time frame of the HOA allows those to be used. So it's got, on that development, it's around 9 in the morning to 8 at night. It's got solar lights that kick on and off, so they're not, we can go turn them on. And then also has a lock on there that is controlled by the HOA as well, so. As far as the lot width, it conforms to the current UDO. The price per home, like I had stated, it's around that 200 square foot price range for a home. So easy math there. When you do, say, roughly a 1,600 square foot home, you're at 320,000, which conforms with the surrounding neighborhoods. That is it.
Okay, last call for Mr. Green while we have him. And I just want to say to you before you go, as it relates to amenities, it's kind of damned if you do with, or it's damned if you don't on the amenities. I'm currently the HOA president of a subdivision with 0 amenities, and I've been the HOA president now for 15, 16 years in the previous neighborhood in Jenks. And I don't have the expertise to answer the question about the cost of insurance of a pool versus a pickleball court. Inherently, I would think a pickleball court would be less. It seems safer. But the pool was the biggest problem we had and biggest challenge we had in our neighborhood. But you could make an argument that you can't live without it. The people moved there because it was there. It was a great asset. It seems like pickleball is the new thing. But we're probably going to have a discussion after you leave about amenities, maybe potentially adding some. I want you to be open-minded as it relates to that. And I'm giving you my perspective, not from a guy that wants to tell you what to do, but from an HOA president who still probably suffers a little PTSD from doing it for too long. I'm kind of wearing that hat tonight.
Sure.
And as soon as I knew we were going to be talking about amenities, I remember sitting in my living room until 1 a.m. responding to residents about the cost, the cost in bankrupting our HOA because of a crack in the pool, or
Sure.
because kids graffitied the clubhouse, or this or that. So amenities are certainly something we've asked for. You know that we denied a previous application because of no amenities, but we also understand that I don't feel like we're in the business of controlling or what happens out there, and I know you can't either after you develop and you leave. We hope the future HOA does have a good relationship with our police department. We hope those things do happen, but ultimately we're not going to control that up here, but
Sure.
I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and close the floor to the applicant and the public. We'll come back to council. What do you guys want to do? Anybody want to start? Thoughts? Light your mic, Mr. Short.
Well, I think we've seen alternatives to this type proposal, and I think there's a couple, and we've kind of alluded to this. Marseille did a good job kind of outlining the differentials, but, it's all masonry. It's larger lot widths. It's a smaller number of lots. So I think this PUD has addressed the primary concerns that I had on the previous transactions, and I think that is appreciated by the council members. And so I think that this is, a presentation that's very positive for this large tract of land. Frankly, it's one of our last tracts of land to deal with.
Great, thank you, Mr. Short. Anyone else?
I'll just kind of follow in on that as well. I think, given the changes that have been made in this proposal, the lot sizes, the density, the amenities is very subjective. What's an effective level of amenities we really don't have defined? You have to have 20%, 10%, and it has to include these items. So the idea that amenities is just an additional incentive for trade-offs in a large development. And in this particular case, the development that's proposed, all of the other areas seem to be very conforming to the UDO. So I really don't have any heartburn with the amenities. Just, I'd raised that previously because that was the concerns with the community. At Providence Hills, I understand that as well. If you've got issues, people that are using the pool, and I would probably stand with the developer on this as well. Being raised in Southwest Florida, where everybody has a pool and every development has a pool, that's because it's sunny year-round and you get the return on investment, whereas in Oklahoma, a pool is a hole in the ground where you throw money. So I can understand you not wanting to invest $300,000 to $400,000 in a pool. My suggestion to Providence Hills would be maybe look at some access controls on your pool area and look for ways to tighten it up on who can come in and go out. But I'm actually okay with the level of amenities, and I feel like the concessions that have been made on this proposal are acceptable.
Okay. Mr. Short?
I asked the question on the timeline of development. One thing I heard was that, more people, more traffic, more cars, that kind of thing. And I just want to reiterate what Mr. Strout said earlier. We've started the widening of Elm Street. It's going to be a Super 5. It's going to be an amazing piece of infrastructure for those residents in the south part of our city. And so given the timeline of the development of this project, will coincide pretty closely with the completion of that Elm Street widening. So I think with all respects to traffic, that's something that we've identified years ago as a staff and council, that we needed to upgrade that infrastructure. And I think that will coincide nicely with this project.
Thank you, sir. I will say this to Charlie, just like medicine and law, it's practiced. We are practicing zoning here. There's nobody up here that's an expert. He and I have been here the longest, and she will admit that we're constantly learning new things. But one thing we do know is that there's no legal or ethical standard to require a minimum or to, how do I word this? My inner attorney is saying, we can't basically say you can't have a small house. But the only control we really do have is manipulating lot sizes so that tinier homes are maybe not even possible. That's kind of the only mechanism we have to really turn the screw a little bit to get bigger homes. I will say that as a resident here, I would like to see 2,000 square foot homes to be that bottom line for this particular part of the South Jenks, because I think that's a pretty good complement to what's around it. So I'm saying that to your future home builders. That's the appetite, and that's what gives harmony to the neighbors nearby. So, and that's a reason why you're here and the other guy's not. So, Charlie, I hope that helps you understand why we can't put a fine line and say you can't have a small house. There was another lady in your community who came here for the Planning Commission, and she asked, I don't know if she used the word moratorium, but I was thinking that that's what she was asking us to consider, is to just stop construction. So I've had a discussion with a few of our residents and our city planner. We had a little panel discussion a month or so ago, and what we learned in that discussion is there's no possibility there's ever going to be a moratorium on construction short of a global pandemic, the city floods, or something very, very bad that would have to be happening for us to consider some emergency measure like that. I don't think there's even a legal or a practical standard in the city's history to interrupt the private free market and tell sellers and buyers that they can't transact and do business on land. So I hope that addresses that young lady's concern that was here from Providence Hills a few weeks ago. My personal opinion on the amenities, I disagree with Mr. Brown. I think I'd like to ask the council to consider a playground. I can tell you that I agree with you on the pool. You have 280 homes, is that what it is? 260. I think most of them would want a pool. I don't know that, some of these lots, I don't know how big they are. Well, I know how big they are as far as bulk standards. I don't see a lot of opportunity for people to put pools in their backyard, but I get it, because they're problematic and they're very expensive. The splash pad is only going to be open for so long, and it's going to be broken most of the time. I'm not saying that as a matter of fact. That's my opinion. It'll be broken most of the time. So that eliminates that amenity for the most part. So in my mind, as an HOA president, I'm thinking the splash pad's broken, pickleball court's going to turn into something it's not intended to be. She's right. It's going to be a place for kids to loiter. I would propose to the council that we, and I think some of the neighbors in the other neighborhood in Providence Hills, I don't know if I'm making this up in my head, but one of the concerns was the location of all the amenities being up in the upper north east corner. So I would propose that you guys consider adding a playground somewhere on the southern border, either in the easternmost pond or the one in the middle. And that would be my recommendation to council, to consider asking them to add that amenity to the southern part of the property. One of the neighbors, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it certainly makes sense in my head that if you take a piece of property this big and you put all the amenities up in the corner, some of these folks down here may not be willing to walk or even drive to participate in those amenities. So give them something they can participate in a little bit closer to where they live, down in the southwest portion of this property. And I know for a fact that that's been my experience. Even in Eddington Place, where I went through all of these things, people would say, there's no way I'm walking over to the pool. So they'd drive over there and call me and say there's not enough parking. The problem with all of this is people, and we can't solve people. So I'm going to recommend to the council that we add that amenity, something quite reasonable, maybe similar in size to the splash pad. And I think a playground probably gets 11 months, maybe even 12 months of use if it's a good one. So the kids will have something to do when it's too cold to splash, and the teenagers won't let the little kids play pickleball or whatever the case may be. These are all things that happen. I think it'd be really good to take care of the younger kids and give them something to do. So that's my recommendation to you guys. I would ask you to support it. If you don't want to, that's fine, but that's where I would be.
If I can respond to that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Actually, again, listening to the Planning Commission meeting, I think, again, Providence Hills, they were looking at something to the southwest. And when I looked at the plat on this, that area one, that they've got the pond and the fountain, the concern that I have about having kids down there is it's right off of South Harvard. So from the chief, I see nods from the chief back in the back. We don't want a kid snatched out of a playground off of South Harvard. Maybe a dog park. Just what's that? Just, again, that was a big concern that I have there. Would the playground off of South Harvard would not be a good location, just from
It's a good point.
standpoint of where kids would be.
Move it over to the middle.
If they were going to do something, yeah, maybe the pond to the center. And again, just what level of playground would be required to add to that.
Okay. Anyone else?
I will throw in one other quick
Yeah.
comment too, and just not to open up a can of worms, but when I read through this,
Do you say that every month?
I'm sorry. The
You
only
open-
residual concern that we really haven't talked about that I think will eventually come back up to the council. I know that Planning Commission, there was a representative or a neighbor that knows the family that's selling the property because of the loss of income on the agricultural. I think eventually there's going to be a question of the parcel that is not sold in this development for agricultural use, what type of agricultural use is going to happen adjacent to this PUD, and will there be some potential restrictions to prevent a grow facility ever coming in on the adjacent property? Just food for thought. It may come up again, hopefully not.
Okay, grow facility, great. Anyone else? All right. Well, whether you agree with me or not, I'd like to make, first of all, I think the Planning Commission did a really good job, and I appreciate you guys. I remember seeing that road, I think Dr. West, I don't know what he called it, but the super long road or the highway, fantastic job in making that happen quickly. When I saw this image for the first time, I was thinking, what the heck happened to the big road? So appreciate you guys maneuvering quickly to get that done. I think this is a far better, I was glad we made the decision we did a few months ago. It almost reminds me that if we wait long enough, good things will happen. And this is a much better product, in my opinion, and I sure hope the folks next door in Providence Hills are happier with what we have here. If we don't accept this, there's really nothing that's going to happen here that's going to probably be much better. And I don't think we should probably interfere with that any longer. I would make, I usually don't do this, but I would make a motion that we approve this application with the exception, with the contingency that the developer add all seasons type playground somewhere in the southern portion of the property. And I'll leave it to you guys to decide where that's the safest thing to do. So I make a motion, we approve this application with the condition that a full season playground be added somewhere on the southernmost portion of the property at your discretion. That's my motion.
Second?
We have a proper motion and a second. Is there a debate on my motion or debate? Last call. All right, seeing there's no debate, let's vote, please.
I just want to make this comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a second, is that we can ask for this, but we can't really dictate as far as, or require it at this point in time.
Whoever can.
No,
Yeah,
I think we can.
that's why we're here.
Typically, you can. It is often nice to have a conversation with the applicant so that they understand the expectation and agree to it. But if they don't agree to it, then they don't have to do the project.
Reasonable. I'm not asking for the Simon Malls playground, nor the
Right.
one behind the aquarium. There's many nice neighborhoods in Jenks, and the playgrounds are low cost, typically low maintenance costs, in my opinion. I used to pay those bills, and the kids are there all year round. And I think this isn't my idea. It came from some of the neighbors next door. So I'm just relating some of those ideas, and I think, as giving what I used to do for a living, I think that's a really good concession. So
Only reason I bring that up is because, we've required stuff before and it just hasn't come to fruition. And I love the playground idea, don't get me wrong. I have grandkids that go to the splash parks, they go to the playground, and it's wonderful. I'm not saying it's not a great idea, it is a good idea. I'm just hoping that we can make that happen. I just think sometimes when we make comments like this in these, it just doesn't come to fruition.
The difference a lot of times is the way the motion is worded. So we can have a conversation for 2 hours about playgrounds, but if it's not included in the motion, I'm not able to enforce it in real life. But if it is part of the motion, it then becomes part of the ordinance, and part of the PUD document, and it's enforceable by someone.
Okay.
And the good news is, if this doesn't happen, it's in your word, so
Yeah, I know.
you'll be right on it.
On the debate on the motion,
Sir.
I would follow that. Again, just asking them to bring back something without some ambiguous, it's very ambiguous to say you need to bring something to us that we like, but not really specifying what that is. So I would ask for a suspense of the motion and bring them back to get their feedback as to what they'd be willing to do before we act on the motion.
I would suggest that the applicant bring an idea or a preliminary design to the city planner, and I think, I don't think it needs to come back to council. I don't think we're going to be the playground police or approve it, but I think out of good faith and the fact I think we want to have a good relationship here. We're not looking for a patch, and we're not looking for, yeah. If you mind coming forward, please, sir? Yeah.
So, Brian Green, so Levi, my son, is better dressed, better looking, and he got his looks from his mom, or his dad, because his mom still got her. I'll leave that alone. So, no protest to adding an amenity in a playground in an area. We don't have any issue with it being wrote into the PUD and bringing back a design what it looked like. So that pleases this council.
Thank you, Father. Pleases. Mr. Shrout, did you have a comment?
Not after Counselor Brown's comment. I think I was just concerned about when we talk about a playground somewhere south, I just see future issues. I think that's what the vice mayor was bringing up with staff and council and the residents and the citizens about, what size is this, what's being provided. But I think if the applicant will bring some sort of conceptual design to the planning director for approval, I think that would be sufficient. So thank you, everyone who commented on that.
Trust but verify. Yeah. Good. Okay. So, we have a proper motion and a second on my motion. Is there any further debate?
Can we restate the motion so we're all clear, please, sir?
Nobody's ever done that to me before. It's never happened. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, let me make this official and go back and look at what number are we on? 3? Yeah, and this is, what Jay-Z is this? Okay. Yeah. Okay. PUD 151. I make a motion that we approve PUD 151 as presented with the condition that the developer add an additional amenity identified as a playground of reasonable size and quality, which would be verified by city staff. And then from that point forward, we will move on and we'll see a plat in the near future. That's my motion.
Second.
We have a proper motion and a second. Mr. Brown, would you like to debate it again?
No.
Thank you, sir. Let's vote, please.
Brown,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Abel,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green, and appreciate you guys being here. Okay, item number 4 is the emergency clause for ordinance 1657.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Thank you both. Let's vote, please.
Brown,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Abel,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes, item 5, PA 24-39, a major amendment to the comprehensive plan use map from multifamily to regional commercial. The general location of the application is 91st Street, west of the Arkansas River. We are on page 99 if you're following along. Mrs. Hilton.
Thank you, Mayor Box, council, and staff. This item has been before you on a previous occasion, but we had an incorrect legal description in the agenda item, so it's back tonight. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. If you look on page, let's just go to the map. Thank you, Brandon. So this is north of 91st Street, or K, and it's adjacent to the river. It has had an approved PUD for many, many years. The PUD technically expired. They did a major amendment to it recently to do the apartment portion. It was for a mix of uses. The zoning or the land use map shows it as multifamily, but I felt like the PUD that was originally approved was a mix of uses including multifamily, and I hated to just see it sitting out there as multifamily only. So I suggested that we change it to regional commercial, and that is what's before you tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. Questions, comments from council? So light your mic. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. No questions, no comments. We can entertain a motion on item number 5.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second?
Thank you both. Proper motion is second. Vote, please.
Brown,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Abel,
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes. Item 6, ordinance 1658, updating 16-3, which is the base district-specific standards of the Jenks zoning code, also known as the Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO, amending the bulk and dimensional standards for new developments, increasing the minimum lot requirements for certain residential zonings, repealing all ordinances or parts thereof in conflict, providing for severability and declaring an emergency. We are on page 105. Mrs. Hilton, are you coming back? Sorry for the up and down.
I've been sitting all day. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. So the Unified Development Ordinance was approved for the first time in 2022, so we've had a couple of years to work with it. And there's a lot of things we love about it, and there's a few things that we're working to change. And I get started on something, and then work gets really busy, and I don't bring it back to you for a long time, and then I get started on something else. So I have a whole bunch of starts and only 1 or 2 finishes. But when we were talking about a recent project, it was brought to my attention that the comprehensive plan and the Unified Development Ordinance had some gaps. We'd never noticed it in almost 3 years. And the comprehensive plan was actually approved in 2020, so in 5 years, we never noticed the differences. But we're aware of them now. When we adopted the Unified Development Ordinance, we went with the recommendations by Halcyon Levine. That was the consultant that was hired to bring us the comprehensive plan, which is called Horizon Jinx. That tells us it's a guide. It's not codified, it's not an ordinance. But then from that and from the recommendations of the Horizon Jinx, we came up with the Unified Development Ordinance. So they did research that showed what does our zoning say? So prior to 2022, what does our zoning say? If an RS1, a residential single-family density 1, how wide are those lots? Well, what we found in general is, for many reasons, most of which I do not know, there were a lot of properties zoned one thing, but completely designed and built differently from the code through the PUD process. And I'm not talking about a little bit different, but a lot different. So a lot of RS1 properties may actually have 55-foot lots, and the code required 70 or whatever. So what they suggested was to right-size the zoning code to match what has been approved over and over and over and over. So when it came to RS2 and RS3, if you look on page 106, sorry, if I had noticed this chart was not on one page, I would have clicked one more time. So if you look at lot area per dwelling unit and lot width, the standards across lot area for an RE is 2,400 square feet, and RS1 is 10,000, then it went to 8,000, and then it went to 5,000. That's what we approved. And that does actually match mostly what has been built. But Halcyon Levine had made two recommendations. They said you could do 5,000 or 5,500, I believe. And then on lot widths for the RE, RS1, RS2, and RS3. So you can see the 60-foot. So it was originally, so tonight we approved a PUD for RS2 at 55-foot lots. And that is what the Unified Development Ordinance is currently. But it has been the appetite of the council to see a little bit larger lots. So I went in and adjusted that. 60-foot lots is fair and reasonable. Everything over 20 acres that develops in the city of Jenks as a residential development does require a planned unit development. So it doesn't mean that every
Can you say that again? What? Say that again,
every subdivision over 20 acres in the city of Jenks requires a planned unit
Okay,
development.
thank you.
It doesn't mean that every project moving forward that gets an RS2 zoning is always going to have a 60-foot lot. I think you should always look at the dwelling units per acre and some of these other things and see how close they are to the densities. And then you have, in your comprehensive plan, an RS1 would fit into, we'll say, medium intensity, single family. Well, that's a big difference in what you can, I don't have it in front of me, what you can do in an RS2. So it could be anything, I don't have it in front of me, so we'll just make numbers up. It could be a 2 to a 3.5 dwelling units per acre. So you could get different lot widths within a 2 to 3.5 dwelling units per acre. You could get different lot depths. So there are some standards that we require, but could have some flexibility within the PUD process. So the other one is the RS3, RS3 currently says 45 and just changing that to 50, which was an option when Halcyon Levine came. Like I said, we went with what was most often built versus what the code had said. So the recommendation is to make those 3 edits. Actually, I think there's 4 edits to this particular chart, and I don't think I had anything else.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Hilton. Questions, comments from council? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Actually, the other day, we discussed, in your opinion, or maybe it was you, Chris, how much property do we have left in the city of Jenks that could actually probably become a residential development? I don't know if it was you or you.
I think that Marseille and I have looked at this, and it's really less than 1 square mile, and the vast majority of that is south. And so this would be one area. There's, I think, 80 acres west of Torrey Lakes. At 141st and Lewis on the northwest corner, there's a significant amount of acreage. The issue with that land is it doesn't have access to water or sewer, so it's going to be extremely expensive for them to tie into the existing system. And what I would anticipate is when that eventually does get built out, and let's call it 160 acres, that those will be large lots with septic systems. And then there's some land west of Highway 75. There's some land at 111th on the north, basically north east corner of a Highway 75 and 111th that St. Francis owned, Habitat for Humanity owns, that they've had different ideas, but there's really not a whole lot of developable land left. And I think that this is one of the last big developments that we'll probably see. And after all the easy stuff is done, I think that the more difficult items will be developed. And I think that what we're going to see in the next 3 to 8 years is more interest in redevelopment of existing neighborhoods, specifically in the area north of the Turnpike and east of Elm.
So I asked this question to kind of answer many questions that have been that get asked all the time, and maybe it's a good time to do it since we don't have a big agenda. There is not a lot of land left in Jenks. What is left is troubled or problematic. It's very expensive. So a neighborhood similar to the one we looked at tonight would probably not be a good fit. Floodway, floodplain, and then frankly, we have an appetite for commercial development that we know we need to sustain and pay the bills for the future. So, you know, to the young lady and her husband that asked me to comment on this publicly, you know, there's no future in South Jenks of sprawling. There's not much more of this left, and frankly, I think for the future city council, I don't think there's a lot of these in your future that you're going to have to consider. So that's a good thing. And as it relates to roads, you know, sooner or later the road construction in the south will catch up, as it's inevitable. The only place I've ever lived, and I've moved my entire life, Texas is the only place that builds roads before the people get there. We don't do that here. I thought we could change it. It's not going to change, and we're not going to change it. We don't have the money to change it. So these roads at some point in the future will grow and they will accommodate. I think the biggest potential projects for this particular part of Jenks is that might change the future, and the accessibility would be the possibility of if it ever happens and if the governments ever get together and make it work, there could be a South Tulsa toll bridge that would be 131st Street. And if that ever does come to fruition, then obviously 131st Street's going to have to become much more like the Peoria Elm that we're about to build. So I think your predecessors suggested the city of Jenks, and when its max capacity would be how many people? 35?
Something like that.
35,000 people. We're in the very, very high 20s, we think. So there's not a lot left. So there's not a lot of this that less than desirable development that's heading your way. I think it's in the light is at the end of someone's tunnel. So just wanted to share that information with you. These are discussions we have when we're talking about with our staff members who are staring at these maps all day. We are not. There's not a whole lot left for Jenks. We are not going to grow, and we are not going to be getting bigger. Our fence line is pretty much where it is. So good news, bad news, however you look at it, that's kind of our future. So back to ordinance number 6. Would anybody like to entertain a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you both. We have a proper motion and a second to approve ordinance 1658. Let's vote, please.
Brown?
Yes?
Short?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Abel?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item 7 is the emergency clause for ordinance 1658.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you both. Let's vote, please.
Brown?
Yes?
Short?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Abel?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
Mayor Bucks?
Yes, sir. Other business, item number 1, anything, Mr. Shrout?
Yes, sir. Related to PSO, we've had a lot of calls, and we certainly have communication with PSO, with their representatives. We have a good relationship with them. Perhaps when we talk to them, there's slightly more influence than just one citizen contacting them, but we really don't have any control over PSO or the power. I will say that I'm going to reach out to PSO and ask that if they could have a representative at the next meeting to try to explain some of this, so we can hear it straight from them as opposed to neighbors talking. And, I don't have a whole lot of information to relay. And so I think it'd be really helpful to have PSO have a rep here and explain what's going on in their own words. So we're halfway through the year, sales and use tax. Sales tax is up about 15.5% halfway through the year. Use tax is up about 36%. Combined, we're looking at a 20% increase year-to-date over last year, which is good. And if you remember, basically the first 2 months of this fiscal year, July and August, we didn't have the mall. So I think that the second half of the year, we're going to see this 20% number increase further. Elm Street project, that construction technically has kicked off yesterday because of the weather and the temperatures. They haven't been able to do much. They've been logistically working on setting up for construction, including all of the signage. Main Street, date to the railroad, I believe the punch list is complete. I think we're still talking with them about issues with drainage on North Birch. The aquarium, large holding animal facility. The contractor is continuing his work inside the building. Public Works completed the installation of the water line and the pressure valve reducer for the building. Fire Station 1, the slab of the building is complete, and the contractor has been working on the subgrade for the parking lot. It looks like we're going to have some winter weather potentially Thursday, with potentially some moderate snowfall. I know our public safety crews and public works crews are following that closely. And then we have a significant amount of events related to the chamber. The State of Education Luncheon with Dr. Butterfield is Wednesday the 15th at the ranch from noon to 1. Then the mayor has suggested to open communication directly with the citizens to have a town hall regarding the Elm Street construction. So if anyone has questions, they can submit those questions through the website or message our Facebook page. Additionally, at the event, which is scheduled for Thursday from 6 to 7:30 at the ranch, that's the 16th, Katie or someone will be collecting cards with questions if you didn't get your question in through the website or on Facebook, and we will have hopefully the contractor there, engineering staff, and other city staff there to answer your questions about the construction. So if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Shrout. Any questions for Chris? Mr. Short?
Mr. Shrout, do we have a tentative timeline on the completion of the fire station?
We do. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. Late summer?
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
We'll say early fall.
Didn't know if it was a 27 event.
And if it doesn't get done in time, we're blaming the squirrels. That's what the big guys do. Speaking of the PSO thing, I wanted to share this with you, while not having a conversation with you, Ms. Aston. It's good that you come and say these things publicly, because it reminds us that sometime we need to keep harping on that. I want you to know, the public to know, I've had direct ask of PSO, and even after them telling me, I just feel like I'm being told what they're told to tell people. I've asked other mayors, mostly in South Tulsa County, the ones that I see frequently, and they're all being told the same story. I think there's probably an underlying, some compromised old infrastructure. They're a giant utility company. They're not going to come out and tell us that they have old stuff. So, you know, I think squirrels is a fun way to kind of answer the question. I don't necessarily know that squirrels are going to do everything that is happening around town, but I appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and hopefully if you can come back. Will that be on the agenda if we do have a speaker from PSO? So people will know? So take a look at that and see if you want to come back and hear it from them directly. And then you can pin him down in the lobby and see if he talks about squirrels. So, all right, thank you, Mr. Shrout. Any council members, anything you want to report on? Anything going on? You two live down south, right? Anything going on the street yet? You haven't driven it yet? Nothing? Okay.
I've driven it.
You don't see anything happening out there? Nothing yet? Okay.
But they did put up some of the signs for warning of trucks and stuff. There was someone with the contractor came by the church today and talked to the pastors about maybe setting up their temporary office space there along Elm. So some things are taking place, but it's slow but sure.
Well, and I think a lot of it's weather right now, too.
Yeah. Yeah, did you bring up a good point? At least 3 business owners on Peoria Elm have told me that the contractor's asking if they could pay them to put all their Connex boxes and construction equipment on site. So you guys, depending on who your friends are and where you live, you may get that call. I would, I don't know if it's something we need to be involved in, but it's going to be a tough 18 to 24 months. All right, I have nothing on my report. I will, next time around, there's a lot of interesting legislation being floated around going into our new session. I would encourage every one of you to start paying attention, following your local legislators on their various social media posts. Keep an eye on what's happening, because before too long, your opportunity to get your ideas and that ship will sail very soon as they're preparing to go back into session next month.
Can I just ask you, Seth?
Yes.
How many power outages would you just guess?
Well, the last one was
10 in the last
a
month?
week ago today, and it went out twice the same day. If I had to guess, probably 11 times in the past month.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, understandable. Okay. If there's nothing further, the time is 7:30. We are adjourned, and we will, unless a recess is needed, we will jump right into Public Works, which will only take a few moments. No recess needed. Last call. All right, very well. It's called to order the Jenks Public Works Authority meeting. Mr. Macy?
Brown.
Present?
Short.
Here.
Emmons. Ogier.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Murray. Here. Chairbox.
Here, item number 1 is our consideration and appropriate action for our consent agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as is.
Second.
Thank you very much. Proper motion is second. Let's vote, please.
Brown.
Yes?
Short.
Yes.
Ogier.
Yes.
Abel.
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Chairbox.
Yes, thank you. Item 2 will pull. Last call, Mr. Shrout, General Manager's report. Anything else?
No, sir.
Great, thank you very much. The time is 7:31. We are adjourned. Happy New Year. Appreciate you being here.